Welcome to the Beltway Broadcast, the premier podcast for the workplace learning and talent development professionals of the Association for Talent Development's Metro DC chapter. We've got some great resources in store for you today.
Hello, fellow ATDers. I'm Christina Eanes, the Vice President of Marketing and Communications.
Hey, everyone. I am Stephanie Hubka, and I am the 2023 Vice President of Membership and Outreach, as well as a member of the Pod Squad here at the Metro DC chapter of ATD.
Behind the scenes, we also have Helena Hodges, our VP of Finance and Operations. Now, today, we're going to engage in some mental health and well-being. Welcome, Catherine Corey, for joining us today.
Thank you so much. I'm absolutely delighted to be here with you. This is my nerdy little heart loves talking about mental health. I'm super fun at parties. So
oh my gosh, it has this already.
I know. Well, now, before we get into the topic, can you share a little bit about your background with our listeners and viewers?
Absolutely. I mean, other than I'm fun at parties. So
that's really what we need to know, right?
We already know that now.
I'm done. No, absolutely. So I'm about as Midwestern as you can get. I was born in Illinois, raised in Minnesota. My parents are from Iowa and Wisconsin. And then I went to school in Michigan. But I've been now in DC for more than 20 years. So I share that because it's important to me and it views a lot about how I see the world and where I come from. I do a lot of work in identity. And so that's also kind of why I share that. So I came up through a lot of association work. So things like ATD are very close to my heart. And for the past probably 10 years or so, I've been doing talent development work. I do executive coaching. I do organizational development consulting. I also spend a lot of my free time, again, doing really fun things to talk about at parties. I've been on a suicide prevention hotline for more than about a dozen years, being on the phones and then moving to chat as our technology changes and our needs change. I also do some volunteer work in reproductive justice, and I'm getting my PhD in clinical psychology. So just a few things going on. But
wow.
I love all of what I do. And I'm very fortunate to be able to have a life that I have built that allows me to do those things. And it took me a long time to get here to figure out exactly what I like to do and be able to do it. So that's a little bit about me. I do. My husband and I split our time between DC and Seattle. So I'm sitting in Seattle right now. So I have some frequent flyer miles as well. That's me.
Just a few.
Yeah.
Well, first, thank you for your volunteer service and helping to save lives.
Oh, thank you.
So we have to go forward with that.
Thank you. That's really, it's something that is really near and dear to my heart. And, it's really important to me. It's interesting as life gets busier and things get a little more hectic. It's kind of always the first thing that people suggest that I give up. And it's just a non-starter.
Yeah.
I believe so much in it. And it's something that I find really gratifying, not in that, oh, hey, look, here's this thing I do. I really enjoy engaging in conversation with people. And there's so few things I think in this world we can actually do anything about. Mm-hmm. And engaging in honest conversation with people when they're at a really low point is one of those things that we can just truly do. So That's why it's so important to me.
Nice. Well, and it's very much in alignment with our topic today, which can be a big area, right? So engage in mental health and well-being. Let's level set for our conversation, our short one today. How are we defining mental health and well-being?
Oh, such a good question. Such a good question. And I think it depends on kind of who we are talking to, truthfully, and what their definition is of mental health and well-being. The definition kind of that I like to use, truthfully, is, it depends again on who you're talking to, but I like to talk about it as it includes kind of our emotional, psychological, and social well-being, because it impacts, really how we think and feel and act. So really anything that impacts how we move through the world. And so often we think about, well, I have to have a diagnosis, or there has to be something wrong with me. And that's just not true. It just impacts how we move through the world. So that's how I think about mental health and well-being. Does that make sense? I'm curious about how that resonates with both of you.
It makes a lot of sense
absolutely.
to me. And I really appreciate the fact that it covers the whole person. There's a lot that goes into what it takes to be human. And so I think that it makes a lot of sense to have that very nice multidimensional look at what mental wellness is. And, along those lines, it kind of gets me thinking a little bit about how mental wellness and mental health have been so much more a part of the conversation, especially over the last couple of years. I know before the pandemic, there were certainly pockets in which it was spoken of and often spoken of very well. There were organizations who were working very hard to take care of people. But I feel like over the last couple of years, the conversation has broadened quite a bit, and it's becoming, I hate to say more acceptable, because it should never have been unacceptable to talk about it, but it feels like it has a little bit more of a home in the conversation we have. And I'm curious what your take has been. How has conversations around mental health and mental wellness changed over the last couple of years at work?
Really, that's such a great observation. And I think really accurate for some spaces, and not for others, which I think is also important to note too. And I think for those where it has changed, where we can kind of pull it along for those spaces where it hasn't changed is important too. So I really appreciate that question and observation. And I think it's interesting, kind of your observation around acceptable too. We tend to think so binary about mental health, where it's, I can talk about it or I can't talk about it. And here are bounds where it's okay to mention this or I can't mention this. And rather than, well, okay, here's part that maybe I am willing to share and I don't have to talk about this. So thinking about those boundaries, right? Around, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. So I think that's been an interesting shift too, to think about, all right, well, what are things I might be willing to share versus what are things that I still might want to keep to myself, or I might want to talk about in different circles. So I think that is part of the conversation and part of the shift, as well as thinking about, okay, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. So as we think about how we talk about wellness in organizations and how people engage, one of the things I think is so interesting and so powerful are the dimensions of wellness. So I find that really useful, and depending on kind of who you talk to or what sources you're looking at, there can be anywhere between 5 and 12 dimensions of wellness.
Wow.
I tend to stick around about 8.
Oh, gosh.
That's because I find it most helpful. But those aspects are things, it's not just, my physical, it's not just my emotional, but it's things like financial, it's things like spiritual and environmental. And so maybe at work, I'm comfortable talking about, my environmental wellness, and I'm comfortable talking about my emotional wellness and my physical wellness, but I don't really want to talk about my spiritual wellness or my financial wellness. So maybe those are things I engage with in different areas, not at work. And so I think that's really interesting for us to think about as well, rather than, nope, I'm just not going to talk about mental health and wellness at all at work, but kind of parsing those things out. So I think that's been a shift that we see as well, rather than all or nothing.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned the all or nothing, because I think us humans tend to do that. I can't tell you how many times people are like, do you want this or that? Or should we involve this or that? And I'm like, how about or some sort of, right? Some sort of like continuum. Yeah. What recommendations? Because we have worked in those places. I mean, I came from a background of law enforcement where it's like, if we had emotions or any kind of issues, that stays at home. That doesn't go to work. Yeah. So for those people that are in that type of work environment, or maybe for those people that are running that type of work environment, what is that first step that people can take towards being more open to having these discussions in the workplace, whether they're all or nothing or somewhere in between, right?
Oh, Christina, I love, first of all, thank you for bringing, that piece of your past life into this conversation. I do some forensic research into law enforcement populations. And you asked such a great question about kind of that, I think, splitting of selves and
compartmentalizing.
Oh God, we're so good at it sometimes because we think it makes us better, but it doesn't. And I think that's the thing to first realize, right? I think a great first step is to understand why we're thinking like that and to ask ourselves what we think we're getting out of it, truly. Why do I feel the need to leave this part of myself at home? Or why, what am I scared of? So really some interpersonal or some introspection to myself that's keeping me from being able to have that interpersonal connection. So starting with yourself first, and I'm going to cheat and go 2 steps. So being able, thank you for allowing me, Grace. So, that first question to yourself. And then secondly, being able to start with a small question to somebody else, even depending on what your relationship might be. Is it, hey, how was your weekend? Or how's, I know this about your family or your child, or I know that you were dealing with this. How's that going? And just a small question can be really helpful to show interest and build a relationship, to start to just be more human. I think it doesn't have to be, so tell me about your deepest, darkest childhood secret and how you've been carrying that around at work. Just showing a human connection and building some of that empathy, I think can be those bridge builders to start to be able to have a foundation for talking about emotions and just humaning at work, really.
Ooh, I love that, humaning.
It's such a good term, isn't it? It's one of my favorites.
Right?
So I'm going to human today. Sorry, go ahead.
Some days are harder than others to human.
Well, yeah, and I think a lot of people run into that, which is why some days you're a little bit more on your game, a little bit more off your game, depending on what's going on. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are as far as building team environments or even organizational environments, because it feels to me like there are some organizations that do a very good job of this. There are others perhaps that have some work to do. But when it comes to helping people to feel safe and secure, like they can do their best work, what do you recommend for teams that are looking to create the kinds of environments that really meet people where they are and provide that type of safety for them?
So lovely. And I appreciate this. I was listening to your conversation with Natasha from a while ago about mental health as well. Yeah. And I appreciate the ability to kind of be able to pull that thread as well in here. So, because we talk about, kind of these safe spaces. And one of the things that I think is so critical is to be able to differentiate safety from feeling safe from feeling comfortable.
Yes.
And right, the ability to understand when we feel unsafe and when we feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because there's such an important distinction between those two. And
Yes.
we are so conditioned to, at the first sign of discomfort, walk away, not engage. I can't do this.
Yep.
Avoid.
Yep. And just run away. But being able to sit in discomfort can really help create those safe spaces. And so understanding what our own reaction to discomfort is and to feeling uncomfortable. So, okay, as a leader, what happens when I get uncomfortable? Do I look to shut something down? Do I look to use humor to deflect? Do I change the conversation? Do I try to hand it off to somebody else? What happens? Or am I able to sit in discomfort and, say, that sounds really hard.
Yeah.
How is that going for you? What is that? So I think that willingness to be uncomfortable and sit with someone else who's uncomfortable can really go a long way. So I'm sorry, Stephanie, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, not at all. I mean, I think what you're really describing is what it means to model the kinds of behaviors you'd like others to see and do. And for a lot of leaders, that's something that's very important for others to see. When things are uncomfortable, how do you react? What do you do?
Yeah.
What choices do you make? Because people will learn something from that. And at the same time, I would say there's probably space for others to be able to do something similar. There's, the idea
Absolutely.
of influencing without authority, for example. So you may be able to bring your, I don't know if it would be a comfort with discomfort, or at least a willingness to explore that space that might encourage others to do something similar.
No, you're absolutely, I could not agree more. And that we talk about managing up and managing sideways and all of these things. Absolutely. So the ability to just sit with somebody who is going through something that's uncomfortable, the ability to work through conflict, the ability to view conflict as productive. There's a lot of that. And, we were talking about at the beginning around, kind of suicide prevention. Even if it's not, even if we're not at suicidal ideation, just we think about when somebody's in pain or somebody's going through something that is uncomfortable, just being able to sit and be in that space and not wanting to fix it, not wanting to solve something, but just be with someone. That's huge.
Empathy. Yeah.
And we don't have a lot of spaces where that happens, where I can just be with you and I'm not trying to solve something. I'm not trying to figure it out. And I think that's especially happens in the workplace.
Yes, it does.
Where we are taught to, we're expected to produce and we're expected to be problem solvers and work our way through it. Well, okay, sometimes I just want to tell you that this is really difficult right now. And I'm having a hard time. I know I'll get through it and I know I can figure out how to work around it, but can I just sit here and tell you it sucks right now?
Right.
Yeah. So I think that creates some safe space. Sorry.
Yeah.
No. So that, I'm trying to think of, because there's benefits to having, I'm trying to get into the mindset of, because I was there many years ago, right? Of, hey, work is for work.
Right.
Right. We need to work when we're here. And then, so I almost think like we need a public service announcement for, hey, these are the benefits of when you create this environment for your folks, right? More productivity. So what would that message be that you would have maybe for those organizations that are like holding off and still kind of in that older mindset?
Oh, are you sure we only have like 20 minutes? How long can the PSA be?
Let's a commercial,
okay,
60 to 120.
How many curse words can I use? I'm just asking. I want to know what my bounds are. I think there's so much around authenticity and what you get from people when they feel free to do their best, to think most creatively and show up as as their whole selves. If you expect people to leave part of themselves at home, then great, you're going to get 10% of them. You can't expect to access all the creativity, all of their leadership capabilities, all of the beautiful, wonderful, smart talent that you hired if you expect them to leave part of themselves at the door every single day. Why would you not want to access that? So it's mind-boggling to me. So I just get what you pay for. Get your money's worth out of people.
I love it. That was beautiful. That was beautiful.
I so agree.
Thank you.
The beautiful messiness that it is to human, right?
Yes.
I mean, we should bring that with us every day. Be proud of it. Be proud of it.
It's truly, I mean, we don't hire widgets, we hire people. Yeah. And that means all of our experiences, all of our identities, all the wonderful messiness that has gotten us here. And it's not just work experience, it's experiences I've gotten through relationships, through my family of origin, through obstacles I've overcome, through really hard lessons I've learned, through things that didn't quite go the way I thought they would, through things that happened exactly as I thought they would, but it didn't turn out that way. So tap into that expertise. Why would you not?
Right. I just love how you put that. That is,
yes.
I mean, it's a great tip and a life lesson and, something to use kind of as a guiding star moving forward. I love that. Although I also love the fact that even though we're coming to the end of our conversation today, we still have a few more questions for you. So I know. We like to save the best for last in some ways, although I'm hard pressed to say that after our conversation today. There's just such wonderful information in what you shared with us. But we like to wrap up it really was. And so we like to wrap up our episodes with what we call rapid fire. So we have 3 quick questions for you. None of them really should take any more than about 60 seconds or so to answer. What do you think?
Okay.
Are you ready? Are you ready?
All right, I'm gonna crack my knuckles here. Get good in my seat. All right, I think I'm ready.
All right.
I think I'm ready.
I warn you, these are the hardest questions we have for you today, but I think you can do it. All right. First question for you.
Some deep breathing.
We should start that way. Give us one book that everyone must read and why.
Okay, I'm gonna cheat and I'm gonna give you 2.
Please do. We love it when people give 2.
Okay, thank you. Because the first one's also kind of heavy, so you need them as a pair.
Okay.
So the first one that I truly is a must read is Emotional Inheritance by Dr. Galit Atlas. And it's just a real light read on generational trauma, but it speaks to how we understand ourselves and our world in a generational aspect. Yeah. So secrets we keep and secrets we know about from our grandparents, from our parents, and secrets we keep from ourselves. So it's a wonderful, it's a really powerful, wonderful story, and understanding the lenses through which we move through the world. And then once you read that, read Joyful by Ingrid Fleet Lee. So she talks about the aspects of joy and the different dimensions of joy. And her background is design. So she talks about, she's a designer and a researcher. And so she talks about all those different aspects about how to incorporate them through, for instance, play. She talks about how to integrate play into your life through big round shapes, because that's the aspect of design. So polka dots, bubbles, places you can go, hula hoops, how you integrate that into your life. So those are my 2 books, Emotional Inheritance and Joyful.
I love both selections, and I think I'm going to go ahead and read both of them. So great recommendations. Yes. Second question for you. What is one tool that you can't live without?
So again, a little bit of a cheat. Brene Brown's podcasts.
Oh, good choice.
And I use them as a curating tool because there's so much good information out there that I want to tap into, but I use her Unlocking Us and Dare to Lead to tell me what I should be reading next and what other podcasts I should be listening to. So that's what I use as my curation tool.
That's a really brilliant way to go about doing that. And one of the best parts about podcasting, honestly, it's that great connection into so many other resources that might be beneficial. What a good
I get really overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed in the best way, right?
Yes, exactly. So just tell me what to do next, Brene.
That's
Thank
right.
you.
That's right. If only she were here. All right. Our last question for you for today. What is the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
So truly, I cannot remember if credit goes, this tells you a lot about me, I think. I cannot remember if credit goes to my mother or my therapist. But it is truly the best advice I've ever been given. It is a compliment sometimes when people do not like you.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
I love that.
So I carry that with me quite a bit.
Wow.
I'm going to remember that one too.
Yeah.
There are some situations, right, where you think, well, I mean, you can't win them all. But no, that is absolutely smart advice. I love that one.
Sometimes it's a compliment when people don't like you.
I love that. I do.
Oh, Catherine, it has been amazing. Thank you so much for spending time with us today and sharing your wisdom.
Oh, thank you both. This has been delightful. I feel so honored to be here and be in conversation and community with you both and the rest of the chapter in this way. So thank you. Appreciate the time.
Well, and of course, we want to thank our listeners and viewers. Before you go, though, we have a message from our producer, Helena Hodges.
Do you need consultant services? The Metro DC chapter of ATD has many talented members. Go to dcatd.org and check out our consultants directory under the resources menu option.
Want to network with other chapter members? Join the Metro DC chapter of ATD members on LinkedIn today.